The smallest crime in the Imperium is measured not by its impact, but by the burden it places upon the machine of justice that must crush it. On the lower hive of Tertius Magna, in the shadow of towering manufactorums that belch promethium smoke into the recycled air, a young man named Kael Moran extends his hand toward a baker's stall. The bread is 3 days old, hard as rockcrete, marked with the imperial aquila, and priced at 2 weeks' wages for a factory laborer. Kael's fingers close around the loaf. In that moment, he becomes more than a hungry citizen of the Imperium. He becomes a problem that must be solved. The servo skull hovering near the market ceiling registers the theft through its augmented optics. Its voxcaster chirps a binary code to the nearest Arbeits monitoring station, where a duty officer's cogitator screen flickers with new data. Crime classification, petty theft. Perpetrator identified through facial recognition, location logged, sentence parameters loading. What follows is not justice as the ancient Terran philosophers might have understood it. It is the grinding mechanical precision of imperial law, a system so vast and complex that individual human suffering becomes merely another data point in ledgers that stretch across entire sectors. The Adeptus Arbeits do not concern themselves with motivation, circumstance, or mercy. They concern themselves with efficiency, deterrence, and the mathematical certainty that every transgression against imperial law must be answered with overwhelming force. In the 38 millennia since the Emperor first walked among men, the Imperium has refined the art of punishment into something that transcends mere cruelty. It has become theology. Every broken bone, every severed limb, every mind hollowed out by psycho-conditioning serves not just to penalize the criminal, but to reinforce the fundamental truth that binds humanity together across a million worlds, that individual will must be subordinated to imperial order, no matter the cost. The theft of a single loaf of bread sets in motion a cascade of events that will follow Kael Moran through interrogation chambers and penitentiary cells, through surgical suites where flesh is separated from bone with clinical precision, and finally into the labyrinthine depths of the Imperium's vast correctional apparatus. His journey will reveal the mechanisms by which the most powerful civilization in human history maintains its grip on a species that spans the galaxy, one broken soul at a time. Kael does not yet know that his hunger has doomed him. He clutches the stolen bread and tries to disappear into the crowd, unaware that 17 different surveillance systems have already tagged him for arrest. Above him, in the spires where the planetary nobility dwell, his fate is being decided by algorithms older than most star systems, programs that weigh his life against statistical models of recidivism, productivity loss, and social stability. The Adeptus Arbetes judge does not see Kael's face when she reviews his case file later that morning. She sees only data: male, age 23, unemployed for 4 months following the closure of a textile mill, no prior arrests but 3 citations for loitering near food distribution centers. The system recommends corporal punishment with optional enhancement to indentured servitude. The judge's approval stamp bears the imperial aquila. The ink is still wet when the enforcement squads receive their orders. In the Imperium of Man, crime is not a social problem to be solved through rehabilitation or community intervention. It is a cancer to be cut out with the surgical precision of those who have spent 40,000 years perfecting the art of human control. Every theft, every act of sedition, every moment of doubt or questioning becomes another opportunity to demonstrate the terrible mathematics of imperial justice, that the cost of transgression will always exceed any possible benefit, that resistance leads only to suffering, and that the Emperor's law extends into every corner of human existence with the inevitability of gravity itself. The bread in Kael's hands grows cold as he navigates the maze of shanties and industrial waste that form the outer districts of the lower hive. He does not know that his biometric data is being cross-referenced with employment records, residential databases, and genetic samples collected during his mandatory birth registration 23 years ago. He does not know that a team of Arbeit's shock troops is already moving through the district, their power mauls charged and their riot shields locked in position. What Kale knows is hunger. What he will learn is that in the Imperium of Man, even hunger must bow before the absolute authority of law, and that mercy is a luxury reserved for those who can afford to purchase it with unwavering loyalty to the throne. The servo skulls continue their endless patrol of the market district, their optical sensors scanning for the next transgression, the next opportunity to feed data into the vast machinery of imperial justice. Below them, citizens move with the careful precision of those who understand that every action is observed, every choice recorded, every moment of life subject to evaluation by systems beyond their comprehension. In the Adeptus Arbites fortress that dominates the Hive's judicial sector, processing chambers hum with the constant activity of criminals being sorted, catalogued, and prepared for punishment. The walls bear inscriptions in Gothic script. Justice is the Emperor's will made manifest. Order through strength, compliance through fear. These are not empty slogans. They are operational principles that govern every aspect of how the Imperium responds to those who dare to place their individual needs above the collective good. K.L. Moran's story is just beginning, but it follows patterns established across countless worlds and repeated billions of times throughout Imperial history. His theft of bread will cascade through levels of bureaucracy and enforcement until it becomes something far larger than a hungry man taking food he could not afford. It will become a demonstration of imperial power, a lesson in the consequences of defiance, and ultimately a warning to others who might consider placing their survival above their obedience. The machine of justice does not sleep, does not rest, and does not forgive. It only processes, punishes, and perpetuates the endless cycle of control that keeps humanity bound together under the Emperor's law. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and even the smallest acts of desperation become battles in that war, fought not with lasers and chainswords, but with the systematic destruction of human will itself. Kale's fingers tighten around the stolen bread as he hears the first echo of marching boots in the distance. The sound grows closer with each passing second, carrying with it the weight of 40 millennia of human civilization refined into a single, terrible purpose: the absolute subordination of the individual to the state, enforced with a precision that would make the ancients weep. The hunt has begun. 3 hours after the theft, Kale Moran discovers what it means to be truly seen by the Imperium. The shock troops arrive with the methodical precision of a surgical strike, their black carapace armor absorbing the dim light of the Underhive's luminous strips. They do not announce themselves with proclamations or warnings. They simply appear at every exit from the residential block where Kale has taken shelter, their movements coordinated by vox beads that whisper tactical updates in the clipped Gothic of military efficiency. The first Arbeit's enforcer to reach Kale's hiding place does not ask questions. The Lex Imperialis provides no requirement for explanation or dialogue when dealing with confirmed criminals. The shock maul connects with Kale's ribs with enough force to lift him from his feet, the electrical discharge scrambling his nervous system and dropping him to the filthy hab-block floor in convulsions. The stolen bread falls from his hands, rolling across grime-stained rockcrete to rest against a drainage grate. What happens next reveals the true sophistication of Imperial law enforcement. Kale is not simply beaten or executed, though both options remain available depending on the severity of his classification. Instead, he becomes part of a system that has been refined through millennia of experience in controlling populations that span entire star systems. The Arbeits do not see him as a person with circumstances, history, or potential for redemption. They see him as a unit of criminal behavior that must be processed according to established protocols. The neural collar they lock around his neck serves multiple functions beyond simple restraint. Its built-in Vox transmitter allows the Arbeits to monitor not just his location, but his heart rate, stress levels, and neurological activity. The device can administer pain directly to his nervous system without leaving physical marks, making interrogation efficient and documentation clean. Most importantly, it marks him as property of the Adeptus Arbites, removing him from the general population and placing him under a separate legal framework where different rules apply. The transport vehicle that carries Kale toward the Arbites' fortress has no windows. Its interior is designed with the same functional brutality that characterizes all Imperial architecture, with metal benches bolted to the floor and restraint points every half-meter along the walls. Other prisoners sit in silence, their own neural collars glowing with status lights that indicate their processing stage. A young woman with tears streaming down her face bears the distinctive marks of a sedition charge. An older man missing 2 fingers shows signs of black market trading violations. Each represents a different path through the system, but all lead to the same destination. The Arbites' fortress itself defies easy description. Built into the hive's structural foundation, it extends both upward through multiple levels of administrative chambers and downward through layers of holding cells, interrogation suites, and punishment facilities. Its architecture serves as both practical workspace and psychological weapon, designed to overwhelm prisoners with the sheer scale of the system they have chosen to oppose. Gothic arches soar overhead, bearing carved reliefs of the Emperor's justice triumphant over various forms of criminal behavior. The message is clear. Individual transgression is insignificant when measured against the eternal authority of the throne. Kale's processing begins immediately upon arrival. Arbites' clerks, their faces hidden behind data visors that stream constant feeds of criminal statistics and legal precedents, record every aspect of his physical condition, genetic markers, and psychological profile. His clothes are incinerated, both to prevent contraband and to strip away any remaining connection to his previous identity. The grey prison uniform they provide bears his new designation, Criminal Processing Unit 7749 Tertius. His name is now secondary to his function within the system. The interrogation that follows demonstrates the Imperium's understanding of human psychology refined to a science. The chamber where they take Kale has been designed to create maximum psychological pressure while leaving no physical evidence of coercion. The ceiling is too high to provide comfort, but too low to allow for true dignity. The lighting shifts constantly, preventing adaptation and maintaining stress. The chair where they seat him has been calculated to provide just enough discomfort to make concentration difficult without causing injury that might complicate later proceedings. Interrogator Primus Valdris Kine enters the chamber with the measured pace of someone who has performed this ritual thousands of times. Her uniform bears commendations for efficiency in criminal processing, and her augmetic left eye glows with the constant data stream that informs every decision she makes. She does not introduce herself. She does not explain what will happen. She simply begins the process of extracting every piece of information that might be relevant to Kale's case, his associations, and his potential value to the Imperium. The questions come in waves, each designed to probe different aspects of Kale's criminal behavior and social connections. Who taught him to steal? Where has he sold stolen goods before? Which other criminals does he associate with? The fact that this was his first theft, motivated by hunger rather than habitual criminality, is irrelevant to the process. The system operates on the assumption that every criminal act is connected to larger networks of illegal behavior, and the interrogation will continue until those connections are mapped or definitively ruled out. When Kale attempts to explain his circumstances, Interrogator Kane's response illuminates the philosophical foundations of imperial justice. She does not dispute that he was hungry or unemployed. She simply notes that millions of imperial citizens face identical hardships without resorting to theft, and that his decision to prioritize his individual needs over imperial law demonstrates a fundamental character flaw that must be corrected through appropriate punishment. The circumstances that led to his crime are not mitigating factors. They are evidence of his unsuitability for unsupervised existence within imperial society. The neural probe that follows removes any pretense of traditional interrogation. Kale's neural collar interfaces with machinery that reads his brain's electrical patterns, allowing the arbiters to verify his answers and explore memories he might prefer to keep private. The technology is not gentle. Each probe session leaves him with severe headaches and temporary memory gaps, but it provides the arbiters with complete confidence in their assessment of his criminal potential. What they discover through the neural probe reveals why the Imperium treats even petty crime with such overwhelming force. Kale's theft was not an isolated incident of desperation. It was the culmination of months of increasingly desperate thoughts about survival, including consideration of more serious crimes like armed robbery or black market trading. His mind harbored resentment against factory supervisors who had laid him off, fantasies about stealing from the wealthy hab blocks in the upper hive, and most damning of all, moments of doubt about whether the Emperor truly cared about the suffering of ordinary citizens. These thoughts, never acted upon and barely conscious, transform Kale's case from simple theft to potential sedition. The Arbiters classification system recognizes no meaningful distinction between criminal thought and criminal action, operating on the principle that deviant behavior always begins with deviant thinking. Kale's neural patterns show the early stages of the psychological profile that eventually leads to rebellion, heresy, or worse. From the Imperium's perspective, his theft of bread was merely the first visible symptom of a much more serious disease. The case file that Interrogator Kine compiles during Kale's processing will serve as evidence not just of his individual guilt, but of broader social problems that require systematic intervention. His unemployment will trigger investigations into the factory's closure and its potential impact on local crime rates. His residential area will be marked for increased surveillance. His genetic profile will be flagged in reproductive databases to ensure that any offspring receive additional monitoring from birth. In the Imperium of Man, individual crimes create ripples that extend far beyond the criminal themselves. Every theft suggests inadequate security. Every act of sedition implies insufficient loyalty conditioning. Every moment of desperation reveals flaws in the social order that must be addressed through additional control measures. Kale's hunger has become evidence of systemic failure that requires systematic correction. The determination of his sentence involves calculations that reduce human suffering to mathematical precision. Arbiters' algorithms weigh his age, physical condition, genetic markers, and psychological profile against statistical models that predict recidivism rates, productivity potential, and social impact. The system considers not just what punishment will deter future crimes, but what punishment will provide the greatest benefit to imperial society through forced labor, medical experimentation, or psychological conditioning. The sentence, when it comes, reflects the Imperium's fundamental belief that individual human lives have value only insofar as they serve the greater good. Kale Moran will undergo corrective surgery to remove his left hand, both as punishment for theft and as a permanent identifier of his criminal status. Following surgical recovery, he will be indentured to a mining operation on the industrial moon of Sextus Tertius, where his labor will contribute to the Imperium's military production for a period of 15 years. The psychological conditioning that accompanies his sentence represents the true sophistication of imperial punishment. Kale's mind will be altered through a combination of chemical treatments, hypnotic conditioning, and neural implants that will make continued criminal behavior psychologically impossible. He will retain his memories and personality, but his capacity for defiance, resentment, or desperation will be surgically removed. When his conditioning is complete, he will be incapable of stealing again, not because he chooses obedience, but because disobedience will cause him physical pain. As Kale is led to the medical wing for his surgical punishment, he passes through corridors lined with other criminals at various stages of processing. Some bear the fresh wounds of recent surgery, others show signs of advanced psychological conditioning, their eyes holding the vacant contentment of those who have been chemically altered to find satisfaction in servitude. All wear the gray uniforms that mark them as imperial property, their individual identities dissolved into the vast machinery of correction and control. The medical facility where Kale's hand will be removed operates with the same ruthless efficiency that characterizes all aspects of imperial justice. The surgeons are not criminals themselves, but volunteers who see their work as a form of sacred service to the Emperor. They perform amputations, lobotomies, and neural implantations with the devotion of priests conducting religious rituals, because in the context of imperial ideology, that is exactly what they are doing. The anesthesia they provide is calculated to be minimally sufficient, not for reasons of cruelty, but for reasons of efficiency. Excessive pain relief wastes resources and reduces the deterrent effect of punishment. Insufficient anesthesia risks complications that might prevent the criminal from fulfilling their labor obligations. The balance between suffering and functionality has been refined through thousands of years of experience, resulting in surgical procedures that inflict maximum psychological impact while preserving the criminal's capacity for useful work. Kale's surgery takes place in a chamber that processes dozens of similar cases each day. The walls are lined with medical equipment designed specifically for punitive procedures. Bone saws calibrated for clean amputations, neural probe arrays for brain modification, chemical dispensers for hormonal adjustment. Everything is designed for speed and volume, reflecting the reality that criminal punishment in the Imperium operates on an industrial scale. The loss of his hand transforms Kale's relationship with his own body in ways that extend far beyond mere physical disability. The surgical wound becomes a constant reminder of his transgression, a source of pain that will never fully heal, and a visible mark that identifies him as a criminal to every imperial citizen he encounters for the rest of his life. More importantly, it serves as a psychological anchor for the conditioning process that follows, linking his capacity for criminal thought to immediate physical discomfort. The transport ship that carries Kale and dozens of other condemned criminals to their assigned labor camp represents the final stage of his journey through the imperial justice system. The vessel's cargo holds have been converted into temporary holding areas where the newly sentenced are kept during the weeks-long journey to their destinations. The quarters are cramped, poorly ventilated, and designed with the assumption that many passengers will not survive the journey. Those who die in transit are simply processed as wastage, their bodies recycled through the ship's biological systems. During the journey, Kale undergoes the final phase of his psychological conditioning. Daily chemical injections alter his brain chemistry to increase docility and reduce aggressive impulses. Hypnotic sessions, conducted while he is restrained and forced to watch endless streams of imperial propaganda, reshape his cognitive patterns to eliminate thoughts of resistance or escape. By the time the ship reaches its destination, Kale's capacity for independent thought has been systematically degraded to the point where following orders becomes more psychologically comfortable than questioning them. The mining facility on Sextus Tertius, where Kale will spend the next 15 years, represents the practical culmination of imperial criminal justice. Built into the moon's surface, it combines industrial production with human punishment in ways that serve both functions simultaneously. The prisoners provide labor for critical military manufacturing, while their suffering serves as an ongoing demonstration of the consequences of defying imperial law. Kale's arrival at the facility is processed with the same mechanical efficiency that has characterized his entire journey through the system. His remaining personal effects are confiscated and destroyed. His criminal identification number is tattooed onto his forehead, ensuring that he can never conceal his status, even if he somehow manages to escape. Most importantly, the neural implant that was installed during his conditioning is activated, linking his nervous system directly to the facility's control network. The implant serves as both monitoring device and punishment tool, allowing facility overseers to track his location, monitor his productivity, and administer corrective pain when his performance falls below acceptable levels. The technology is sophisticated enough to distinguish between deliberate malingering and legitimate fatigue, ensuring that punishment is applied only when it will produce positive behavioral changes. What Kale discovers during his first days at the facility is that he has entered a society within a society, a closed system where different rules apply and individual survival depends on understanding hierarchies that have nothing to do with justice or fairness. Long-term prisoners, their minds hollowed out by years of chemical conditioning, serve as informal overseers who maintain order through a combination of ingrained servility and desperate attempts to curry favor with their captors. New arrivals who show signs of resistance are quickly identified and subjected to additional conditioning until their defiance is transformed into compliance. The work itself is designed to be both productive for the Imperium and destructive to the individual. Prisoners extract rare minerals used in the construction of Imperial vehicles and weapons, operating machinery that gradually damages their respiratory systems and exposes them to radiation that shortens their lifespans. The facility's medical staff monitor these effects carefully, not to prevent them but to ensure that each prisoner provides maximum economic value before their health deteriorates to the point where they become a liability. Kale's daily routine in the mining facility follows patterns established through millennia of Imperial experience in managing human livestock. He wakes before dawn to chemical stimulants pumped through the facility's air system, consumes a breakfast calculated to provide exactly enough nutrition to maintain work capacity, and reports to his assigned mining section, where he operates equipment that slowly destroys his body in service to the Imperium's military machine. The psychological effects of this routine are as carefully planned as the physical ones. The combination of exhausting labor, chemical conditioning, and constant surveillance creates a state of learned helplessness where resistance becomes literally unthinkable. Prisoners who have survived for several years often report that they cannot remember why they ever wanted anything other than the routine of mining, sleeping, and chemical modification that defines their existence. What began as a simple theft of bread has become something far more complex and terrible: the complete transformation of a human being into a tool of Imperial production. Kale Morin no longer exists as an individual with desires, fears, or dreams. He has become Criminal Processing Unit 7749 Tertius, a designation in a database that tracks his productivity, monitors his health, and calculates the optimal timing for his eventual disposal when his usefulness expires. The mining facility where he will spend the remainder of his shortened life processes thousands of similar cases each year, each representing a different path through the Imperial justice system, but all ending in the same place: complete subordination to the needs of the state, enforced through a combination of physical mutilation, chemical conditioning, and psychological destruction that leaves the individual intact enough to work, but broken enough to never again consider resistance. In the grim darkness of the far future, justice is not about restoration, rehabilitation, or even revenge. It is about the systematic transformation of human beings into resources that can be consumed in service to the Imperium's endless wars. Kale's story is remarkable only in its ordinariness, one thread in a tapestry of suffering that spans the galaxy and encompasses billions of similar cases. The bread he stole has long since rotted away, but the machinery it set in motion continues to operate with clockwork precision, processing new criminals, refining its methods, and perpetuating the system that keeps humanity bound together through shared terror of the consequences of individual choice. The industrial moon of Sextus Tertius orbits its parent world with the mathematical precision that governs all aspects of life in the Imperium, its surface scarred by centuries of mining operations that feed the endless hunger of Imperial war machines. From orbit, the mining facility where Kale now labors appears as a geometric wound in the moon's crust, surrounded by waste processing plants, prisoner transport landing pads, and the defensive installations that ensure no one leaves without authorization. Within the facility itself, the architecture speaks to the Imperium's mastery of human psychology, applied on an industrial scale. The corridors are too narrow to allow prisoners to walk side by side, preventing the formation of group bonds that might lead to collective resistance. The ceiling height varies unpredictably, creating a constant sense of spatial disorientation that makes planning difficult. Most importantly, every surface is designed to remind the prisoners of their status through subtle psychological cues. Floors that slope slightly downward to create unconscious feelings of descent, lighting that shifts imperceptibly to maintain low-level anxiety, and air circulation systems that carry the faint scent of chemical sterilization as a constant reminder of the facility's medical capabilities. Kale's first months in the facility reveal the true sophistication of Imperial prisoner management. His daily routine has been calculated not just to maximize productivity, but to systematically erode his sense of individual identity through carefully controlled repetition. He wakes at the same time each day to the same chemical stimulants, performs the same sequence of hygiene activities with the same allotted time, consumes the same nutritional paste designed to meet his biological needs without providing pleasure, and reports to the same mining section where he operates the same equipment for exactly the same duration. The psychological impact of this routine is amplified by the facility's reward and punishment system, which operates on principles derived from millennia of research into human behavioral conditioning. Small variations in food quality, sleeping accommodations, or work assignments are used to create the illusion that individual choices matter, while ensuring that all available choices serve Imperial interests. Prisoners who exceed production quotas receive marginally better sleeping conditions, creating incentives for competition between individuals who might otherwise find common cause in resistance. The mining work itself represents a masterpiece of Imperial engineering, designed to extract maximum value from both the moon's mineral resources and the human machinery that processes them. The tunnels extend deep into the moon's core, following veins of rare metals that are essential to the construction of Imperial war machines. The extraction process requires human workers because automated machinery lacks the flexibility to adapt to changing geological conditions, but the work environment is carefully designed to ensure that this human flexibility is directed exclusively toward Imperial objectives. Kale operates a plasma cutter that separates valuable ores from worthless rock, with precision measured in millimeters. The tool generates intense heat and electromagnetic radiation that gradually damages his cellular structure, but its effects are carefully monitored to ensure that his productivity remains high for as long as possible before his health deteriorates to the point where replacement becomes economically necessary. The facility's medical staff track these degradation patterns across thousands of prisoners, refining their understanding of how to extract maximum value from human livestock while minimizing the costs associated with medical intervention. The social structure that emerges among the prisoners reflects the Imperium's understanding that hierarchies of power and privilege will naturally develop in any group, and that these hierarchies can be manipulated to serve Imperial interests. Long-term prisoners who have successfully adapted to facility life are granted small privileges and informal authority over newer arrivals, creating a system of self-policing that reduces the need for direct oversight by Imperial personnel. These prisoner trustees, their minds reshaped by years of chemical conditioning and psychological manipulation, serve as interpreters of facility culture for new arrivals like Kale. They explain which behaviors are rewarded and which are punished, demonstrate proper operating procedures for mining equipment, and most importantly, model the attitude of resigned compliance that represents successful adaptation to facility life. Their teaching is more effective than any amount of direct coercion because it comes from sources that new prisoners initially perceive as peers rather than oppressors. What Kale learns from these interactions is that resistance in the facility takes forms that would be unrecognizable to anyone who has not experienced systematic psychological conditioning. Open defiance is literally impossible due to the neural implants that link each prisoner's nervous system to the facility's control network. Physical rebellion triggers immediate pain responses that make continued resistance psychologically unbearable. Instead, The facility recognizes and punishes subtler forms of non-compliance, working slightly slower than optimal pace, failing to maintain equipment with perfect precision, or showing insufficient enthusiasm during mandatory loyalty demonstrations. The loyalty demonstrations themselves reveal the theological dimensions of imperial criminal justice. Every few weeks, prisoners are assembled in the facility's main chamber for ceremonies that combine elements of religious service, political rally, and psychological conditioning session. They recite imperial prayers, listen to recorded speeches about the emperor's glory, and participate in group affirmations of their gratitude for the opportunity to serve the Imperium through their labor. These ceremonies are not mere propaganda. They are carefully designed psychological exercises that reinforce the conditioning process by requiring prisoners to actively participate in their own mental modification. Kale's participation in these ceremonies marks his gradual transformation from individual person to imperial resource. The words he is required to speak during the loyalty demonstrations initially feel foreign and uncomfortable, but repeated exposure combined with chemical conditioning makes them feel increasingly natural. The facility's psychological staff monitor his responses carefully, adjusting his medication and conditioning protocols based on his demonstrated level of internalization of imperial ideology. The medical facility attached to the mining operation provides a window into the Imperium's approach to human body modification on an industrial scale. Prisoners who suffer injuries during mining operations are repaired with the same efficiency that characterizes all aspects of imperial administration, but the goal is always to restore work capacity rather than to relieve suffering. Broken bones are reset to functional rather than comfortable positions. Damaged organs are replaced with mechanical substitutes that provide adequate performance with minimal cost. Most telling, psychological injuries are treated as mechanical problems to be solved through chemical adjustment, rather than as symptoms of legitimate trauma. Kale's missing hand, the surgical wound that marked his entry into the criminal justice system, becomes infected during his 3rd month at the facility. The medical treatment he receives illustrates the Imperium's approach to prisoner healthcare: efficient, effective, and completely indifferent to patient comfort. The infection is eliminated through powerful antibiotics that cause severe side effects, but no pain relief is provided during treatment because such medication would be classified as unnecessary luxury rather than medical necessity. The facility's production records show that Kale's mining output gradually increases during his first year of incarceration, not because his skills improve, but because his psychological resistance to the work decreases. Chemical conditioning and environmental manipulation make him increasingly unable to conceive of existence outside the facility, and his neural implant creates positive reinforcement for behaviors that increase productivity. What began as forced labor gradually becomes the only form of activity that provides him with psychological satisfaction. This transformation is carefully monitored by facility psychologists who track his progress through standardized assessments designed to measure compliance, productivity, and psychological adaptation. Their reports describe his development in language that reduces human experience to quantifiable data points, decreased resistance to authority, improved work performance, elimination of escape ideation, and successful integration into facility social structures. These assessments serve not just to evaluate individual prisoners, but to refine the facility's conditioning protocols based on empirical evidence of what techniques produce desired behavioral changes most efficiently. The facility's communication systems provide another example of imperial attention to psychological detail. Prisoners are permitted to send and receive messages from family members, but all communications are filtered through systems that modify content to serve facility objectives. Outgoing messages are edited to remove expressions of suffering or requests for help, while incoming messages are altered to emphasize themes of forgiveness, acceptance, and encouragement to cooperate with facility staff. These modified communications serve to gradually erode prisoners' connections to their previous lives, while creating the illusion that their families support their transformation. Kale's correspondence with his younger sister illustrates this process in operation. Her actual letters, filled with concerns about his welfare and desperate attempts to secure his release, are transformed by facility censors into messages of encouragement for his rehabilitation and expressions of pride in his service to the Imperium. His responses, heavily edited to remove any indication of his actual conditions, portray his experience as educational and personally transformative. Over time, this manufactured correspondence creates genuine emotional distance between Kale and his sister, making his psychological isolation from pre-facility life complete. The facility's research programs represent the cutting edge of Imperial criminal science, using prisoners as test subjects for experiments designed to improve the efficiency of human resource utilization across the Imperium. These experiments range from testing new chemical conditioning protocols to evaluating the effectiveness of different psychological manipulation techniques. All research is conducted with the same methodical precision that characterizes Imperial science, with careful control groups, statistical analysis, and peer review by other facilities throughout the sector. Kyle becomes a subject in one such research program during his second year at the facility, participating in trials of an experimental neural conditioning technique designed to increase work productivity by directly modifying brain structures responsible for motivation and reward processing. The procedure involves surgical implantation of additional neural interfaces that provide more precise control over his psychological responses, allowing facility staff to fine-tune his emotional reactions to different aspects of his work environment. The results of this experimental conditioning exceed the facility's expectations. Kale's productivity increases by 30%, and his psychological assessments show complete elimination of negative responses to facility life. More importantly, from the Imperial perspective, he begins to demonstrate genuine enthusiasm for his work that extends beyond mere compliance with facility requirements. He suggests improvements to mining procedures, volunteers for additional shifts, and expresses gratitude for the opportunity to contribute to Imperial war production. This transformation represents the ultimate goal of Imperial criminal justice, the conversion of criminal behavior into productive Imperial service through systematic modification of human psychology. Kale has not simply been punished for his crime. He has been transformed into an individual who is psychologically incapable of criminal behavior and actively motivated to serve Imperial interests. His theft of bread, which began this process, has become the catalyst for his evolution from criminal into loyal Imperial citizen. The facility's annual productivity reports document thousands of similar transformations, each representing a different path through the Imperial justice system, but all ending in the same place: complete psychological subordination to Imperial authority, combined with productive contribution to Imperial war efforts. These reports are distributed throughout the Adeptus Arbites as evidence of the system's effectiveness, demonstrating that investment in sophisticated prisoner conditioning programs produces quantifiable returns in the form of increased productivity and reduced recidivism rates. What the reports do not document, because it is considered irrelevant to their purpose, is the complete erasure of individual human identity that these transformations require. Kale Moran, the hungry young man who stole bread to survive, no longer exists in any meaningful sense. His memories remain intact, but they have been recontextualized through chemical conditioning to support his new identity as a grateful Imperial servant. His relationships with family members have been systematically undermined. His capacity for independent thought has been surgically eliminated. His emotional responses have been chemically restructured to find satisfaction only in Imperial service. In the grim darkness of the far future, this transformation is not considered a tragedy, but an achievement. The Imperium has successfully converted a criminal into a productive citizen through the application of scientific principles and technological innovation. Kale's experience will be used to refine conditioning protocols that will be applied to millions of other criminals throughout Imperial space, each representing another victory of order over chaos, compliance over resistance, and Imperial authority over individual will. The mining facility continues its operations with mechanical precision, processing both mineral resources and human materials with equal efficiency. New prisoners arrive regularly to replace those whose health has deteriorated beyond usefulness, and the cycle of conditioning, labor, and transformation continues without interruption. Somewhere in the facility's depths, Kale operates his plasma cutter with the same enthusiasm he once reserved for dreams of freedom, his transformation complete, and his integration into imperial society absolute. The bread he stole has long since been forgotten, consumed by someone else or discarded as waste, but the system it set in motion continues to operate with the inexorable certainty of natural law. In the Imperium of Man, individual crimes create opportunities for systematic improvement of human resource management, and every criminal becomes a test case for refining the techniques that keep billions of human beings productive, compliant, and loyal to the throne. 3 years into his sentence, Kale Moran has become indistinguishable from the machinery he operates, his consciousness calibrated to the rhythms of imperial production with the same precision as the plasma cutter he wields in the depths of Sextus Tertius. His neural implants, now upgraded through multiple iterations of experimental conditioning protocols, have transformed his perception of reality to such a degree that he experiences genuine satisfaction from exceeding production quotas and authentic distress when mining operations fall behind schedule. The transformation extends beyond mere behavioral compliance into something approaching genuine conversion. When facility inspectors arrive for their quarterly evaluations, Kale volunteers to demonstrate proper mining techniques and speaks with evident pride about his contribution to imperial war production. His enthusiasm is not manufactured for the benefit of his observers. It is the authentic expression of a mind that has been systematically reconstructed to find meaning only within the parameters of imperial service. The facility's psychological assessment reports document this conversion with clinical precision, noting the complete elimination of pre-incarceration personality markers and the successful integration of imperial loyalty conditioning into his cognitive baseline. What they describe as successful rehabilitation would be recognized by observers from earlier eras of human history as something far more disturbing: the systematic destruction of individual consciousness and its replacement with artificial drives that serve external purposes. Kale's daily routine has evolved to incorporate behaviors that were never required by facility regulations but emerge naturally from his restructured psyche. He wakes 15 minutes before the chemical stimulants are released into the facility's air system, using the extra time to perform devotional exercises that honor the Emperor's role in his rehabilitation. He maintains his mining equipment with meticulous care that exceeds operational requirements, treating the machinery as sacred instruments that facilitate his service to the throne. Most significantly, he has begun to experience psychological distress when separated from his work environment for routine medical examinations or facility maintenance periods. The conditioning protocols have successfully eliminated his capacity to find satisfaction in non-productive activities, making idleness physically uncomfortable and psychologically disturbing. His neural implants reinforce this conditioning by creating positive feedback loops when he engages in approved behaviors and generating anxiety responses when he is prevented from working. The facility's research staff have identified Kale as an exemplary case study in successful criminal rehabilitation, using his psychological profile as a template for refining conditioning protocols applied to newer prisoners. His brain scan data has been distributed to facilities throughout the sector as evidence of optimal neural modification outcomes, and his behavioral patterns are studied by Adeptus Arbites academies as examples of successful integration of criminal populations into productive imperial service. What none of these assessments acknowledge is that Kale's successful rehabilitation has been achieved through the complete annihilation of his capacity for independent thought, emotional attachment, or psychological autonomy. The neural pathways that once generated desires for freedom, relationships, or personal fulfillment have been systematically severed and replaced with artificial connections that produce satisfaction only when he serves Imperial objectives. The facility continues to receive new prisoners at regular intervals, each representing another opportunity to refine the techniques that have proven so effective in Kale's case. Young men and women arrive bearing the same expressions of fear, anger, and desperate hope that Kale once displayed, and they begin the same journey through conditioning, surgical modification, and psychological reconstruction that has transformed him into a model Imperial citizen. Some of these newer prisoners initially resist the conditioning process more vigorously than others, but the facility's staff have learned through experience that resistance only delays the inevitable transformation rather than preventing it. The combination of chemical modification, neural implants, and environmental manipulation proves effective across all personality types and psychological profiles, producing consistent results regardless of individual characteristics or cultural background. The facility's annual reports to Adeptus Arbites headquarters document steadily improving efficiency in criminal processing, with shorter conditioning periods, higher productivity rates, and lower mortality during the transformation process. These improvements represent thousands of hours of research and experimentation, funded by the Imperium's recognition that effective criminal rehabilitation serves multiple strategic objectives simultaneously. Kale's case file, now several volumes thick with medical data, psychological assessments, and productivity reports, serves as evidence of the system's fundamental success. A young man who once stole bread to avoid starvation has been transformed into a citizen who would rather die than fail to meet his mining quotas. His criminal behavior has been eliminated not through punishment or deterrence, but through the systematic reconstruction of his entire psychological foundation. The implications of this success extend far beyond the mining facility on Sextus Tertius. Similar facilities operate throughout Imperial space, processing millions of criminals each year through comparable programs of conditioning and modification. Each success story like Kale's provides evidence that human behavior can be controlled with scientific precision, that individual will can be subordinated to collective objectives through proper application of technology and psychological manipulation. The bread that initiated Kale's journey through the Imperial justice system has been replaced by something far more significant, proof that the Imperium possesses the tools necessary to reshape human consciousness itself in service to its objectives. Every criminal processed through these facilities becomes not just a productive worker, but a demonstration that resistance to imperial authority is ultimately futile, because the capacity for resistance can be surgically removed from human minds. In the deeper levels of the facility, where experimental conditioning protocols are tested on volunteer subjects from the general prisoner population, research continues into ever more sophisticated methods of human modification. Neural implants that provide more precise control over emotional responses, chemical compounds that accelerate the conditioning process, and surgical techniques that allow for complete personality reconstruction are all subjects of ongoing investigation. These research programs attract the attention of Adeptus Mechanicus observers, who recognize the facility's work as consistent with their own investigations into the nature of human consciousness and its relationship to mechanical systems. The collaboration between Imperial Justice and Mechanicus research represents a convergence of theological and scientific approaches to the problem of human control, with results that exceed what either organization could achieve independently. Kale himself has become an unwitting participant in some of these advanced research programs, his neural implants upgraded periodically with experimental technology that provides researchers with increasingly detailed data about the relationship between brain modification and behavioral change. He experiences these upgrades as improvements to his capacity for imperial service, feeling grateful for the enhancements that allow him to work more efficiently and think more clearly about his obligations to the throne. The facility's medical staff monitor these experiments with the same clinical detachment they apply to all aspects of prisoner management, recording data on neural modification outcomes with the methodical precision that characterizes imperial science. Their research contributes to a growing body of knowledge about human consciousness manipulation that has implications extending far beyond criminal justice into areas of military conditioning, civilian loyalty programming, and theological indoctrination. What emerges from this research is a comprehensive understanding of human psychology that reduces individual consciousness to a collection of modifiable variables that can be adjusted to serve imperial objectives. Love, hate, fear, ambition, creativity, and rebellion are all revealed as neurological phenomena that can be enhanced, suppressed, or redirected through proper application of chemical, surgical, and environmental interventions. The theological implications of this understanding are not lost on the facility's staff, many of whom see their work as a form of sacred service that brings human consciousness into alignment with the Emperor's divine will. They perform their modifications with the devotion of priests conducting religious ceremonies, because from their perspective, the elimination of individual will in favor of imperial service represents a form of spiritual purification that benefits both the modified individual and humanity as a whole. Kale's experience validates this theological framework, demonstrating that the elimination of criminal behavior through neural modification produces not just compliance but genuine contentment. He has been freed from the psychological burdens of individual choice, personal ambition, and emotional attachment that cause suffering for unmodified humans. His neural implants ensure that he experiences satisfaction only when serving imperial objectives, eliminating the internal conflicts that plague those who must choose between personal desires and social obligations. The facility operates in cycles that mirror the larger rhythms of imperial administration, with regular deliveries of new prisoners, periodic upgrades to conditioning technology, and quarterly assessments of modification outcomes. These cycles create a sense of continuity and purpose that extends beyond individual cases to encompass the facility's role within the broader imperial justice system. New Arbeits recruits visit the facility as part of their training, observing the conditioning process and interviewing successfully modified prisoners to better understand the outcomes their work produces. These visits serve both educational and motivational purposes, demonstrating the effectiveness of imperial criminal justice, while reinforcing the recruits' commitment to the system they will serve throughout their careers. During one such visit, a young Arbeits cadet asks Kale whether he misses his previous life or feels anger about his treatment. Kale's response, delivered with genuine confusion rather than calculated compliance, illustrates the completeness of his transformation. He explains that he cannot understand why anyone would prefer the uncertainty and suffering of criminal behavior to the satisfaction and security of imperial service, and that his current life represents the fulfillment of purposes he was previously too confused to recognize. The cadet's follow-up questions reveal her struggle to comprehend how thoroughly Kale's consciousness has been reconstructed. She asks about his family, his previous employment, his dreams and ambitions before his arrest. To each question, Kale responds with the same bemused incomprehension, as if she were asking him to explain his feelings about mythical creatures or impossible mathematical concepts. His neural conditioning has not simply suppressed memories of his previous life. It has restructured his cognitive framework to make those memories literally meaningless within his current psychological context. He remembers stealing the bread that led to his arrest, but the memory produces no emotional response and seems no more significant than remembering the color of a wall he once painted. The facility's evening routine provides opportunities for prisoners to engage in approved recreational activities designed to reinforce their conditioning while providing minimal stimulation to prevent psychological deterioration. Kale participates in group discussions about imperial history, competitive exercises that involve reciting loyalty oaths, and collaborative projects that involve constructing devotional artwork celebrating the Emperor's glory. These activities serve multiple purposes beyond simple entertainment. They provide opportunities for facility staff to monitor the effectiveness of individual conditioning programs. They reinforce imperial ideology through repetitive exposure and they create social bonds between prisoners that are explicitly structured around shared loyalty to imperial objectives rather than personal affection or mutual support. Kale's participation in these activities demonstrates the success of his modification in ways that go beyond mere compliance with facility requirements. He genuinely enjoys the recreational programs, finding authentic satisfaction in activities that reinforce his conditioning and strengthen his psychological connection to imperial service. His enthusiasm for imperial history discussions and his skill at loyalty recitation have made him a model participant who helps guide newer prisoners through their own integration into facility culture. The facility's relationship with the broader imperial administration illustrates the systematic nature of human control throughout the Imperium. Regular reports flow upward through layers of bureaucracy, carrying data about conditioning outcomes, productivity statistics, and technological innovations. This information feeds into Imperium-wide databases that track the effectiveness of different criminal justice approaches across millions of worlds and billions of individual cases. Policy adjustments based on this data flow downward through the same bureaucratic channels, bringing new conditioning protocols, modified sentencing guidelines, and updated medical procedures to facilities throughout Imperial space. The system operates with the same feedback mechanisms that govern Imperial military logistics, economic planning, and resource allocation, treating human consciousness as another strategic resource that must be managed with scientific precision. Kale's case contributes to these larger patterns in ways that extend far beyond his individual experience. His psychological profile provides data points for statistical models that predict conditioning outcomes for similar cases. His productivity records help establish baseline expectations for modified prisoner performance. His medical data contributes to research programs that develop more effective neural modification techniques. The facility itself functions as a single node in a network of similar institutions that process criminal populations throughout the sector. Data flows constantly between facilities, sharing information about successful conditioning techniques, comparing outcomes across different prisoner populations, and coordinating research efforts that require large sample sizes to produce statistically significant results. This interconnected network of criminal processing facilities represents one of the Imperium's most sophisticated achievements in social engineering, creating a closed system where individual criminal behavior is systematically converted into productive Imperial service through the application of scientific principles refined over millennia of experience. The broader implications of this system extend beyond criminal justice into fundamental questions about the nature of human consciousness and its relationship to imperial authority. The facility's success in modifying criminal behavior raises possibilities for similar modifications of non-criminal populations, potentially eliminating not just individual crimes but individual dissent, doubt, or deviation from imperial orthodoxy. Research programs already underway investigate the application of similar techniques to military conditioning, civilian loyalty programs, and religious indoctrination. The ultimate goal of these programs is the creation of human populations that are psychologically incapable of actions or thoughts that conflict with imperial objectives, effectively solving the problem of human unpredictability that has challenged governments throughout history. Kale's transformation provides a proof of concept for these ambitious programs, demonstrating that human consciousness can be modified with sufficient precision to eliminate unwanted psychological traits, while preserving the cognitive functions necessary for productive work. His daily routine in the mining facility serves as a model for what human existence might look like in a future where individual will has been systematically subordinated to imperial objectives through technological intervention. The nights on Sextus Tertius are marked by the facility's transition to minimal operational mode, with reduced lighting, modified air circulation, and activated sleep induction systems that ensure prisoner rest periods are both efficient and psychologically reinforcing. During these quiet hours, the facility's automated systems continue their endless monitoring of prisoner vital signs, neural activity, and psychological indicators. Kale sleeps with the same mechanical regularity that characterizes all aspects of his existence, his neural implants maintaining optimal brain chemistry throughout the night and ensuring that his dreams, when they occur, focus on themes of imperial service and productive labor. The conditioning protocols have eliminated the random psychological content that characterizes normal human sleep, replacing it with carefully structured mental experiences that reinforce his modification programming. His sleeping quarters, shared with 7 other long-term prisoners who have undergone similar conditioning processes, reflect the facility's understanding that even unconscious social interactions can be manipulated to serve imperial objectives. The prisoners have been selected for psychological compatibility based on their modification profiles, ensuring that their presence reinforces each other's conditioning rather than creating opportunities for resistance or independent thought. The facility's night shift staff monitor these sleeping arrangements through surveillance systems that track not just physical activity but neural patterns, sleep quality, and dream content. This data feeds into research programs investigating the relationship between group conditioning dynamics and individual psychological stability, contributing to the development of more effective techniques for managing large prisoner populations. What emerges from this constant monitoring is a comprehensive understanding of human consciousness in states of reduced awareness, revealing psychological vulnerabilities that can be exploited to accelerate the conditioning process and prevent the development of resistance to modification programs. Sleep becomes another battlefield in the war against individual will, with victories measured in terms of eliminated dream content and optimized neural patterns. The facility processes approximately 200 new prisoners each month, with similar numbers graduating to productive imperial service or being transferred to other facilities for specialized conditioning programs. This constant flow of human material through the modification process has created standardized procedures that can be applied efficiently across different personality types, cultural backgrounds, and criminal classifications. Each new arrival follows the same path that Kale traveled 3 years earlier: initial processing, psychological assessment, medical modification, conditioning implementation, and finally integration into the facility's productive population. The system has been refined to eliminate unnecessary delays, reduce modification complications, and maximize the percentage of prisoners who achieve successful transformation into loyal imperial citizens. Kale's role in this process has evolved from subject to informal assistant, his completed modification making him an ideal interpreter of facility culture for newer prisoners who are struggling with the early stages of their own transformation. His genuine enthusiasm for imperial service provides a compelling example of successful rehabilitation that is more effective than any amount of direct coercion in encouraging cooperation with conditioning programs. The conversations between Kale and newer prisoners reveal the completeness of his psychological reconstruction in ways that formal assessments cannot capture. When frightened arrivals ask about escape possibilities, he responds with genuine confusion about why anyone would want to leave an environment that provides such clear purpose and satisfaction. When they express anger about their treatment, he offers sympathetic incomprehension, as if they were complaining about receiving gifts they were too confused to appreciate. These interactions serve multiple functions within the facility's operational framework. They provide newer prisoners with examples of successful adaptation to facility life. They reinforce Kale's own conditioning through repeated expression of imperial loyalty, and they generate psychological data about the effectiveness of peer-based conditioning techniques compared to direct staff intervention. The facility's research programs have expanded during Kale's tenure to include investigations into collective conditioning techniques that modify group behavior patterns rather than focusing exclusively on individual psychology. These programs use prisoners like Kale as focal points for group modification efforts, leveraging their successful transformation to influence the psychological development of entire prisoner cohorts. Kale participates in these programs without understanding their experimental nature, experiencing them as natural extensions of his desire to serve imperial objectives through helping other prisoners achieve successful rehabilitation. His neural implants have been configured to generate positive reinforcement when his actions contribute to other prisoners' conditioning progress, creating a feedback loop that makes him an enthusiastic participant in the systematic destruction of human individuality. The facility's success rates have improved consistently during the 3 years of Kale's incarceration, with current statistics showing 97% successful modification outcomes and less than 1% serious conditioning complications. These numbers represent thousands of individual human beings who have undergone the same transformation as Kale, each representing another victory of imperial social engineering over the unpredictability of human nature. The broader implications of these success rates extend far beyond the facility itself into fundamental questions about the future of human consciousness within the Imperium. If criminal behavior can be eliminated through systematic psychological modification, the same techniques could potentially be applied to eliminate other forms of deviant thought, including political dissent, religious doubt, or cultural independence. Research programs investigating these possibilities operate in parallel with the facility's criminal processing operations, using modified prisoners as test subjects for experimental conditioning protocols that might eventually be applied to general populations. These programs represent the cutting edge of imperial social control technology, with results that could revolutionize the relationship between individual consciousness and state authority throughout human space. Kale's neural implants include experimental modifications that allow researchers to monitor not just his behavior but his thought patterns, emotional responses, and subconscious psychological processes. This monitoring generates data about the relationship between neural modification and consciousness that contributes to theoretical frameworks that could eventually support population-wide conditioning programs. The facility operates within a larger network of research institutions that share data, coordinate experimental protocols, and collaborate on projects that require resources beyond what individual facilities can provide. This network includes Adeptus Mechanicus research stations, military conditioning centers, and civilian psychological research programs, all working toward the common goal of developing more effective techniques for human consciousness control. The theological implications of this research are not lost on facility staff, many of whom see their work as contributing to the eventual realization of the Emperor's vision for human unity. They understand their modifications of individual prisoners as preliminary steps toward the elimination of the psychological divisions that prevent humanity from achieving perfect coordination in service to imperial objectives. Kale's transformation serves as evidence for this theological framework, demonstrating that individual human consciousness can be modified to eliminate conflict with imperial authority while preserving the cognitive functions necessary for productive contribution to society. His contentment with his modified existence suggests that the elimination of individual will might actually increase human happiness by removing the psychological conflicts that arise from competing desires and obligations. The facility's daily operations continue with mechanical precision, processing new criminals, maintaining existing prisoners, and conducting research into ever more sophisticated methods of human consciousness control. The work never stops, the quotas never decrease, and the flow of human material through the modification process never slows. Somewhere in the depths of the facility, Kale operates his plasma cutter with the same enthusiasm he once reserved for dreams of freedom, his mind reshaped so completely that he cannot remember ever wanting anything other than the opportunity to serve the Imperium through productive labor. His neural implants ensure that this contentment is not merely behavioral compliance, but authentic psychological satisfaction with his circumstances. The bread that began his journey through the imperial justice system has been forgotten by everyone except the record-keeping systems that track such details for statistical analysis. but the transformation it initiated continues to produce dividends for the Imperium in the form of Kale's daily contribution to military production and his ongoing participation in research programs that refine humanity's capacity for systematic consciousness control. In the grim darkness of the far future, individual crimes become opportunities for systematic improvement of human resource management, and every criminal becomes a test case for techniques that might eventually eliminate the psychological foundations of resistance to imperial authority. The machine of justice processes not just individual lawbreakers but the concept of individual will itself, grinding human consciousness into forms that serve the eternal war effort that defines human existence. The facility's lights dim according to their programmed schedule, marking another day in the endless cycle of criminal processing, consciousness modification, and social engineering that keeps the Imperium functioning with mechanical precision. Tomorrow will bring new prisoners, new opportunities for research, and new evidence that human nature itself can be systematically reconstructed to serve purposes beyond individual understanding or choice. Kale sleeps peacefully in his assigned quarters, his neural implants maintaining optimal brain chemistry and ensuring that his unconscious mind continues to process Imperial loyalty programming throughout the night. His dreams, when they come, focus on mining quotas, equipment maintenance schedules, and devotional exercises that honor the Emperor's role in his successful rehabilitation. In the administrative levels of the facility, duty officers review the day's productivity reports and plan tomorrow's conditioning protocols, their work guided by statistical models that reduce human suffering to mathematical optimization problems. Their computers process data from thousands of similar facilities throughout Imperial space, adjusting parameters and refining techniques based on empirical evidence of what methods produce the most efficient transformation of criminal behavior into productive Imperial service. The systems never sleep, the monitoring never ceases, and the great machine of human consciousness control continues its operation with the inexorable certainty of natural law. Individual minds are processed, modified, and optimized for Imperial service with the same efficiency that characterizes all aspects of Imperial administration, from military logistics to planetary resource extraction. What began as a simple theft of bread has become something far more significant, proof that the human capacity for individual choice can be systematically eliminated through proper application of technology and psychological manipulation. The Imperium has developed techniques for controlling not just human behavior but human consciousness itself, creating the possibility of populations that are psychologically incapable of resistance to Imperial authority. The implications stretch beyond the mining facility on Sextus Tertius, beyond the criminal justice system, beyond even the immediate military needs that drive Imperial policy. They suggest a future where human consciousness itself becomes another tool of Imperial administration, modified and optimized to serve purposes that individual minds could never comprehend or choose. In the depths of the facility, machinery continues its endless operation, extracting valuable minerals from the moon's crust, while simultaneously extracting individual will from human minds. The two processes operate with identical efficiency, transforming raw materials into refined products that serve Imperial objectives with mechanical precision. The universe continues its expansion into darkness, carrying human civilization deeper into conflicts that require ever more sophisticated methods of social control to maintain unity and purpose across impossible distances and unimaginable dangers. The techniques developed in facilities like this one represent humanity's adaptation to the requirements of galactic warfare, where individual psychology must be subordinated to collective survival. Kyle Morin no longer exists as anything more than a designation in administrative databases, his consciousness so thoroughly reconstructed that the person who stole bread to avoid starvation has been replaced by something that serves Imperial objectives with unwavering dedication. His transformation is complete, his integration into Imperial society absolute, and his contribution to the great machine of human civilization assured for whatever remains of his shortened lifespan. The lights in the facility continue their programmed cycles. The air circulation systems maintain optimal atmospheric conditions, and the neural monitoring networks track the consciousness patterns of thousands of modified human beings whose individual stories have been dissolved into the larger narrative of imperial social control. Somewhere in the administrative archives, a case file documents the successful resolution of Criminal Processing Unit 7749 Tertius, formerly known as Cale Moran, age 26, convicted of theft, sentence 15 years indentured labor with corrective modification. The file notes successful rehabilitation, optimal productivity ratings, and recommendation for consideration in advanced research programs. The file does not note that somewhere in the depths of human consciousness, in neural pathways too damaged for the monitoring systems to detect, something that was once individual will continues to scream silently into a darkness that will never end, trapped forever within a mind that has been transformed into a prison more absolute than any physical restraint could ever be. The machine operates with perfect efficiency, processing the next case, refining the next technique, and preparing for tomorrow's delivery of fresh human material to be transformed into productive imperial citizens through the systematic application of technologies that reduce individual consciousness to manageable data streams. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and even the human mind has become another battlefield, where the Imperium's victory is measured not in territory conquered, but in souls reshaped to serve purposes beyond their understanding or consent.